Pete, Peter, I heard what you were saying before about the demo project.
It looks like we are good to go. Possibly, maybe. I'm not sure. Okay. Thank you so much, Brian, for the link. I'm going to pull that up on my phone so that anyone who has questions can message in the chat. I just need somebody else who's here to send me that link, which would be super helpful so that I can keep track of everything. And yeah.
I was about to write that.
Oh, do we have the link?
Right at Hacker.
All right. I'm just going to pull everything up on my phone so that we're all on the same page. Bram, bram. That's the only reason I'm not looking at the camera. I'm a theater minor. I know how to do this. All right.
Looks like you're good to go.
It looks like I'm good to go.
You're good to go.
Beautiful. Okay. And let me just pull up that chat. Oh, well, that's the old link. You know what? It's oh, event announcements. Perfect. To actually have the, is this the most recently updated link? Beautiful. Okay. So now I have the chat up. I also have the slides up. So anyone who has questions, you can go ahead and message me here. And hi, Jack. Yes. All right. I'm not certain where I was, but basically Git is super, super helpful. Helps you keep track of changes and helps you coordinate with a lot of hackers. So some of the services between Bitbucket, which I mentioned earlier, and GitHub, there are a couple of differences. This visual is a bit old though, so I want to go forward and send you guys the link for that information later, just to make sure you have the most up-to-date information. And similar to why it's important, here is what you can do. We're going to start with mentioning how to retrieve old versions and actually put in your changes, but being able to merge changes is something really, really cool. And once you are able to do that, your entire team could be working on the project at once and be able to bring it all together without losing anything that you've done. And on that note, let's talk about actually uploading and getting your commands in. So now here is a list of 101, the most basic commands that you would need to know. And so some people may have some experience doing stuff like this, but essentially, in case of a fire, the way you upload what you've done is committing it, pushing it, and then you leave. That's first thing you gotta do. But before you can actually upload your information to a repository, you have to clone it to your machine, which is what git clone helps you to do. And we can have a bit of a demo section, which is a bit hard working virtually. But for now, we'll talk about exactly what commands there are. And then later we can see if we want to do any type of demo. So the phrasing is git clone and then that repository name, which if you make a repository on GitHub, you can see exactly what you have to clone. And then you will have all of the commands that you can use with Git onto that repository. Then to actually get that code and any updates that have happened onto your machine is as simple as git pull. And let's say you're working with branches, which if you don't know what they are yet, it's okay. But for people who do, this is how you get the information from another branch into the origin. And that has to do with pull requests, which I will tell you in just a moment. But let's say you've made a great change to the code on your index file. You've added a whole list of extra links, cool stuff like that, you need to actually tell Git what files that are necessary to add. And if you want to add everything, you do git add and then a period, a dot at the end of that. And so this is how Git knows what you want to track. And then let's say you don't know if you pulled recently or everybody does updates, you fall asleep, and then when you wake up, you're not sure what's happening to Git. Git status is a very, very helpful command just to know if you need to pull or if you're on track with the repository. And this one, you don't need to mention what repository it is because you're already working inside of that repository. And here's an example of what I was talking about. So it tells you about your branch. It tells you anything you've changed that isn't ready to commit. And let's say you didn't add all of your files when you did git add, then it will list which ones Git basically doesn't know about with those untracked files. And so that is the general idea. I am checking for questions of these basic ones. And I know that there's a bit of a delay, so feel free to message anytime and then I'll help you out. But now here's that commit line that we've been talking about so much. This is how you really save everything. And something that you do not want to miss is the -m, the message that you can add to your commit. That is the only way other people will know exactly what or why you wanted to change what you did. So some example messages might be fixed browser link or uploaded new files or anything like that is really helpful for your other members of your team to know what's going on. And git log is similar to git status in that you don't need to add anything to it afterwards. It just tells you exactly what other commits other people have done. And then let's say you have an entire API that you've been using to reference or get extra features in your project. You might not be changing that very often. And so you might want Git to just ignore that. That's what git ignore does. And like I mentioned earlier, a lot of repositories are public. So you definitely do not want a file that's named password that has all of the passwords to the admin account to be out there publicly. So that is the main idea of git ignore. And anytime I look down, I am looking at the YouTube video in case you have questions. So you've done all this setup. You want to make sure that this is actually on the server. You just git push and you're safe. Now, there are a couple of standards you'll definitely want to follow when you're committing. Any big files can run into problems with limits. If you're just starting out a project, though, for the hackathon, odds are you won't run into that problem, but it is helpful to know. And just like how if I asked you what you did or what you ate a week ago for breakfast, you might not know. You do not want to wait a super long time to do a commit, because the more frequent it is, the more you know exactly what's been changed. And just like these bullet points are mentioning, labels are super helpful, and debugging is made so much easier if you know when something broke. So that is the main idea. But now, something gone wrong. Let's say you commit and it completely breaks everything. You can revert that. Pretty explanatory. But then, let's say you make all these commits. You want to do the final step to push. because if your computer breaks, it won't be tracked. And checking out what branch you are on is very helpful. We'll go into what branches are in just a bit. And .git ignore files are super helpful for Git to automatically know what you should ignore. But let's say you ignore what's telling the program to ignore things. That'll get a bit confusing. And a message that just says changes things isn't a very helpful message, just as an example. And being able to go back to a working part of your program has to do with reverting back much, much, much farther. And also, your Git history changes when you do a reset. So these are very important features. Hopefully, they never come up and you never have to do this. But just in case, these are some notes that'll really help you to know what is saved and what is not saved. So ideally, I would do a bit of a demo that's a bit easier in person because I can walk around, check out your computers. But mainly, oh, okay, perfect. You could go to this GitHub. It's a bit older, but getting Git on your terminal and following the steps for each of those installation should get Git working on your machine. And again, these are the commands that are super helpful for you to use. And I can go ahead and link after this is done some helpful resources that you could follow to be able to do all of this stuff. And now we'll go into advanced Git just for a little bit here. I want to save time in case anyone has questions. But this has to do with what I kept mentioning, branches. And this helps for different parts of the team to work on their specific part without messing with the master branch. And any working area can be turned into a branch. And that visual really helps for you to understand how those changes happen. So when you go ahead and check out your feature branch, then any changes you make there will not break the working version on the original branch, which is a super helpful feature because if you have your website working perfectly and you want to use a feature or make a new feature, then you don't want to mess with that with your commits, but you still do want to commit. So that's the idea of this integration branch visual. Now, I know this slide is a lot, but it is all of the commands that you might need for making these branches. And essentially, they have to do with creating the branch and changing any branches that you want to base that off of. And finally, merging everything to that branch. But like I've mentioned, any new feature, it can be helpful to make it a new branch. And then rebasing your branch with the master can also help in terms of getting the most working copy to be live for your site. Now, pull requests are very helpful because you want to verify that a feature is working before you just take that branch and smush it into the original. Because if you do that without any verification, something could super easily break. Plus, if you're working on a 20-person team at an internship, you might want to check the work of people that you don't know. And that's what that peer review step really helps you with. And all of this can really help you to elevate your game. So we had some examples that help you out with that. But Git flow, if you go ahead and search about what Git flow is, that describes what I've been mentioning this entire time about coordinating and making sure you have your own space to work, but then it can go back in for a new version easily. But sometimes Git doesn't really know what to do if two people have changes that are at odds with each other and you both try to push at the same time. And this is just an example of those errors that are coming up. So let me go ahead and go back to the slide. Handling those errors can be a bit tough, but with a bit of research and also a bit more communication with your team, you will be able to avoid them overall. But if you can't avoid them, there are a lot of resources you can do. And always remember, you can go back in your commit history if anything breaks too badly. And that is the main idea. I am definitely open for questions. And I also want to share with you some links that have helped me in learning all of this stuff. But if you have any questions or want to learn more about SBCS events, go ahead and join our Facebook. You could also email us any questions you have or learn about the club overall at sbcs.io. We definitely used GitHub for that, and that's actually how we're hosting that site. So we know a lot about GitHub, and we want to help you know about that, as well as how to elevate your professional game, your academic game, social game, all of that stuff. So I'm going to just hang out for a moment and let the Zoom chat catch up in case anyone has questions. And if they don't have questions, I'm going to go ahead and bring up some links that'll help you review and really understand all the stuff I just mentioned. So to do that, I'm going to click back here and just do a bit of clicking around while I get that up for you. Perfect. Okay. So the idea of flow can be a bit confusing. So let me go ahead and pull that up for you. Oh. Here, I'm going to stop share for just one moment. Boop. But don't worry, stay on the call for some helpful links. I just want to make sure I'm sharing the right part of my screen here. And okay. Here is something that'll help you out with the very beginning stuff and then understanding the flow. So I am going to re-share my screen with the part that I want to show you. Okay. So here's just a short thing you can read that talks about the beginning part that I mentioned. And this is right off of GitHub itself. So you can go to the source and ask, but I also will be hacking for the entire hackathon. So if you have questions, you could also ask me. But ideally, you should reach out to your mentors because that's what they're here for, to help you. So don't be afraid to ask help, is my point. I hope that didn't get too rambly. But please don't be afraid to ask for help. And a place you can get help is GitHub Guides. Here's just your basic hello world introduction. And then over here, GitHub Flow has to do a bit more about branching and actually getting that branch to go back into the master. So I hope that these help. It's essentially just github.com/guides.github.com/activities/hello world. And then this other option for if you want to learn anything more is introduction/flow. So that is the main idea. And we're ending a little bit early here. So last call for any questions. And I will also post some of these resources in the general chat for if anyone has questions or if you want to reach out to SBCS. I mentioned it earlier before everything kind of crashed, but over here is our mascot, if anyone is curious. That right up there, that ugly fish, is what a sea wolf actually is. If you Google what is a sea wolf, you will get probably some results from Stony Brook, but also some results showing a very ugly fish that SBCS has accepted as our own. And we call him Bites. So there's a bit of a fun fact. But yeah, that's pretty much all, everyone. I will ask here any questions. But yeah. Thank you so much to SBU Hacks for being amazing and setting all this up. I don't know how the moderators are doing it. Thank you to the mentors and volunteers for getting everything started. I really enjoyed the opening ceremony. So that's the main idea. I think that we could just go ahead and say goodbye for now and ask for help and happy hacking. I do not know how to not go live anymore. Meep boop.